Day for all Americans. Now, 10 years later, we remember.
I was in Washington, D.C. I was working for the Bush administration, and I was in a meeting with the government accounting office reporting out on the foster care system.
I was a pastor in Troy, Alabama, and at that time I actually didn't watch the news that morning.
I was actually working at Sprint at the time. I was not the president of the college, and I was I'm a corporate attorney for them in the regulatory department, and so I was talking, just in my office there in Kansas City.
Someone came in and told me that a plane had gone into the Twin Towers. Didn't have even an inkling. I didn't even stop the meeting. But as the meeting came to a close, it was at 8 o'clock, so it was 9 o'clock. They still hadn't hit the Pentagon. I said, there seems to have been some sort of incident, and you might want to check your emails or something. At that point, where I worked in Health and Human Services, we didn't have TVs in every room the way they do a lot of places in Washington. There were all kinds of rumors about, like the Capitol grounds were on fire, everything was possible. We knew we were at war. The secretary was calling us for our emergency plans. We were brand new. We had just gotten into our positions, didn't know where anything was. At that point, what was interesting to me was the communication level was terrible. No one knew what was going on except for we were going to not leave our posts. At that point, people don't remember this, but there had just been an attack in Japan in the subway system, which is how most of us commuted. I'm not getting in the subway system. I'm not going to be killed by sarin gas, which is what I thought was coming next. And thank God for the passengers on 93, because my office was very close to Congress, and that's where that plane was going. And I had huge picture windows, and I could have easily, they would have either missed the Capitol and hit my office, or the blowout of the windows could have easily decapitated me.
And I had a penance service in Montgomery at a Catholic high school, which is about 40 miles from there. So I drove to Montgomery, and when I got to the school, it was a bustle, with all this, the World Trade Center had been hit, and, one had already collapsed, or maybe even both, but everybody was watching, everybody was talking about it, and I was just like stunned, just what's going on. And they didn't know at the time that it was a terrorist attack, I guess it might have been just the first one hit or whatever. So it was, just pretty stunning.
Oh no, I totally, absolutely thought it was an accident. I just figured it was some small plane guy, flying around and got lost or had a heart attack or something like that and flew into a building. So clearly the first plane into the building, just didn't even understand the significance. Then when the second plane hit, and then there was reports of the plane run into the Pentagon, and then there's the other report of the plane crashing in Pennsylvania, and then all of a sudden you knew something very serious was happening.
Not family, but I would say a working colleague, Barbara Olson, was killed. She was the Solicitor General's wife. I had been in meetings with her, and you have this sense of unreality. You go home, and you just start watching the television compulsively. And I remember when it broke. The news broke that she'd been on the plane that hit the Pentagon. And at that point, I broke down. It became real.
I knew people who knew people, but I did not know anybody personally.
A buddy of mine who actually is an alum of here, a guy named Sean Flynn, who was an economics major here at Benedictine College, when he got his PhD in economics at Notre Dame, and then he was working for Deutsche Bank in New York City. He was actually in one of the World Trade Center buildings, but not the Twin Towers. So there was a series of buildings there, and some of them were smaller. and he was in he was in one of those buildings. And so now all of a sudden, this happened, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, how's Sean doing? So I just happened to catch him at home, said he's okay, and so I sent an email out to all of our buddies and his cousin that lived in Indiana and all this stuff that I knew, to make sure everybody knew, because they were all trying to get a hold of him too, and they couldn't get a hold of him. So.
You don't take anything for granted, although that fades quickly, but you're grateful for every day that you have, and you're grateful for all the sacrifices that were made on that day. The guys that went up the towers never came back.
So any kind of natural disaster, where there's a lot of loss of life, you get the same feeling, but not, and because we're all susceptible to nature and the impact it can have on people. But certainly, I don't think from a human point of view, that an attack in that way, I've never experienced anything like that.
There are people out there that hate America. I think it's possible. It's always possible, because it's terrorism, because there isn't a specific country but an ideology, that these things could happen.
For Circuit Online, I'm Timothy Kramer.